coming up to 9 o'clock. It ran for 12 years, won numerous awards and became compulsive viewing in Thatcher's Britain. The often rude and risque puppets on Spitting Image regularly attracted audiences of more than 50 million people.
To mark the 30th anniversary of the first programme, BBC4 is going to show a documentary celebrating its influence. We'll speak to Roger Law, who's one of the show's creators, in a moment. First, let's remind ourselves of what Spitting Image was all about.
Norman, speak up, man, for God's sake. Say what you mean. You're not on the platform now.
Nigel pinched my pen.
Nigel?
He did.
Is this true? You know my policy on stealing from one's friends? Cabinet. What do we call it when people go around stealing other people's property? You!
A free market economy?
Rubbish! What do we call it, David?
Socialism.
Well done, David.
Oh, wonderful. Hooray! Henry it is, then.
Yes, hooray, Henry. Yes.
Good. I'll christen him. I name this baby Henry. May God bless him and all who sail in him.
We are joined now by Roger Law, one of the creators of the show. So many fond memories. And actually, if you look at it, even so much afterwards, it's still really edgy.
I think the other side of that coin should be Thatcher.
I wondered what you
Spitting
had in
Image
your
Thatcher.
pocket.
Well, would the programme have been as successful as it was without Margaret Thatcher?
Well, she was as abrasive and as rude as the programme, and so was Reagan. So we were very fortunate. Then we had Arthur Scargill. They weren't very sort of huggy type people, really, were they?
So how did you, I mean, you know, how do you take their face, you take their characteristics. How do you develop a puppet for people? How did you do it?
Well, we were caricaturists, Peter and I. We were not puppeteers. Neither of us could make puppets. Peter Fluck, yeah. So we had to find a way to make the caricatures move. And they sort of didn't really. We had an army of people to make that show. We'd have floundered miserably. Well, we did to start with, actually.
The first reviews were pretty awful.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, you could smell the fear on the way to the studio.
And it worked against the circumstances because you tried telling it to a couple of studios and they wouldn't have it, and finally Central in Birmingham said they would run it, but it involved shipping lorry loads of puppets up and down the motorway.
Well, indeed. I mean, if there'd have been a crash, that would have been the end of Spitting Image. You know, we should send up 500 or 600 puppets a week. Charles Denton was the man that got behind it and made it all possible. And the studio just completely didn't know what was happening because they did Crossroads. And suddenly all these old hippies and lefties turned up with these horrible puppets, you know.
You must have enjoyed those times. And I mean, as I say, the satire is edgy now and harsh then, wasn't it? How did you, you know, when you went about it, did you enjoy doing that to people in some
Oh, I really wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't about getting rich and famous. It was a very difficult time. If you can cast your mind back, you probably can't. I can. The country was divided, and we wanted to make the show. And we were helped in a way. It sounds awfully conceited, but the opposition wasn't that great at the time with people like
controversial some of it. I mean, the sketch we saw at the beginning involving the royal family, nobody had ever done that before, taken a pop at the royal family.
They always did until Queen Victoria, and then they became very middle class. We sort of revived that tradition, but the tradition.
Did you get into trouble for that?
Not at all. People were a bit shocked because John Lloyd, the producer, wanted them to be like normal people, having breakfast and talking. I mean, we didn't know they ate breakfast out of those little plastic boxes at the time, but that was the idea. The Queen was a secret communist and CND supporter.
CND supporter with her badge on her belt there.
Do you think you'd be able to get away with that now?
I don't think you could ever have gotten away with it on the BBC because they're meant to be unbiased, and Spitting Image was pretty biased. And ITV didn't really know what they were getting into, and nor did we, to be fair, because we tied a craft process to a newsroom. That's insane, because everything you're looking at is handmade and has to be got ready for camera.
But are the targets the same? I mean, people always say this, that the characters in the old days were, especially in politics, were sort of more colourful and presented better targets.
No, if you're a good caricaturist, they're always there. The difference is that, rather naively probably, I thought Thatcher had some control over what she was doing. I don't think they do anymore. I think people like Cameron, they privatise so much of the country, they're in control of nothing. And the people who are in control are faceless. You don't know who they are.
Who was your favourite person to caricature? Was it Margaret Thatcher?
Are you talking about the puppets?
Yes.
I hated them all.
You hated
every
them?
single one.
Did you? Why?
Well, simply because you had to go through hell to make them.
Yes.
And there'd be one joke, like Elizabeth Taylor's fat. And they'd do the joke, and then she never came out of her box, you know.
It became a monster for you in the end, did it?
Well, it sort of always was. I think it was great fun if you worked at Spitting Image. I wanted to work for me. That was my ambition. But it was a nightmare because you needed so much talent to pull the show together. When you had Steve Coogan, Harry Enfield, Kate Robinson, the voice artist, the writers all went on. Red Dwarf came out of Spitting Image, the two writers that put a lot of the jokes, Ian Hislop.
And no danger of it ever coming back?
Over my dead body. But it'll probably come back on the net. Somebody will do it.
Yeah.
Roger, thanks very much.
Thank you both.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Special arena programme, Whatever Happened to Spitting Image, BBC 4 tomorrow night at 9. Watch it, it'll
Now
roll
the
back
truth
the years.
can be told.
Oh, thank
Thanks,
you.
Roger.
In a moment, we're going to meet